Good morning, everybody. This is Mike from MikeandDooley.com. We are honored today to have former U.S. Ambassador Scott DeLisi on the show with us to talk about a lot of things. We actually had an interesting conversation before the show, which maybe we'll bring some of that stuff up. But as you can see, I'm on one side of the screen, and Mr. DeLisi is on the other side of the screen, and I will let you introduce yourself.
Well, good morning, Mike, and good morning to all your viewers and listeners. My name's Scott DeLisi. I spent 35 years serving our nation as a career diplomat, something I never aspired to as a kid growing up in Minnesota, but you never know where our lives are going to take us, right? And
yes. That was actually one of my questions for you is how does one, I mean, did you feel motivated? Did you feel led? How did you gravitate towards a career in public service?
You know, as a young man, I started university in 1971 at the tail end of the Vietnam War era. The campus was in chaos still. I didn't know why I was there, so I left. I went to work for a few years. Ultimately, I traveled to Europe, and I saw that there was this whole world out there that I hadn't seen before. So I went back to school, I waltzed through the liberal arts, but I ended up in history and diplomatic history because there was a professor who was really cool, made it come alive. And I thought for a minute, how do you get to be a diplomat?
Right.
But this was in the late 70s. It was Minnesota. There was no Google, there was no internet, and I wasn't going to go to the library to do the research. Figured you had to know someone. So I kind of let it wither a bit. But the idea always was there. And then a couple of years later, I was in law school, and I didn't want to really be a lawyer. but it was a good thing to do, right? Good education.
Right.
And then one day a guy gave me an article, the Wall Street Journal had an article in it. Read the article, don't remember what it was, but I thought I'd better look at the want ads to see what lawyers were doing in the real world. And there was an ad about this big, and it said, U.S. Department of State announces examination. I thought, you take a test? Oh, heck, I do tests. I applied, just beat the deadline, and I got in. And, there were 20,000 of us that took the test, and only 200 got offers.
Wow.
Right? And so you say, it's really hard to get into. I have no clue what this really is, but I got to give it a try. I didn't join at the time, Mike. It wasn't about service. It wasn't about, what can I do for my nation? I needed a job. They were giving me an offer. It seemed like a good idea.
Sure.
But I'll tell you that very quickly, you learned it was all about service. It was about service to our nation. It was about service to values that we believe in as a people. It was about service to the global community, to trying to build the world that we want to live in, that we want our children and our grandchildren to be able to live in. And you get hooked on this stuff. And that's kind of what happened to me. As I said, I didn't start the journey, to serve, but it became all about service.
Well, it sounds like you may not have thought that was the path you were going to go down, but once that path opened, you really went down it. You ran down it.
I did. I drank the Kool-Aid, but I don't have a single regret. But it redefined my life, and it shaped my life in a different way than I ever would have expected as a kid growing up in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Now, how did you? So your career started there, and then how did you gravitate towards the Nepal and that whole region? Because that's a very unique area. I mean, is that something that you say, hey, I'd love to be an ambassador to that area, or how did that happen?
For those of us who start out as career officers, it's a lot like the military where rank structured, you work your way up through the ranks, and you don't start out saying, I'm going to be a 2-star general or 3-star general. You just want to serve, you do your job. And that's much the same in our line of work. I was a political officer, so you do tend to gravitate towards one region or another. My first assignment was in Bombay, India. We have a degree of choice, but we can say, here are some of the ones I'd like, but there's no guarantee. But I was fortunate enough that I got assigned to Bombay. I loved it. I was excited about it. And I came to truly value working in the subcontinent, but equally I spent my career kind of going back and forth when I was overseas between Africa and the subcontinent. I served in in the subcontinent, I served in India, I served in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, I was ambassador. In Africa, I had served in Madagascar, I was in Botswana, I was the ambassador in Eritrea, and then finally in Uganda. So it was kind of split between Africa and South Asia, but you get hooked on these regions. It's fascinating stuff.
I guess so. I mean, I would imagine growing up in being from St. Paul, Minnesota, and then spending much of your adult life, it sounds like, over in that area must have been somewhat of a culture shock to begin with.
I tell you, I'll never forget landing in Bombay. Yeah, you arrive, my first posting. You think you're ready, but you land at 2:30 in the morning, Santa Cruz Airport. There's this massive humanity. It's hot. It's humid. You're surrounded everywhere. You get off the plane and you are seeing things, hearing things, smelling things that you've never experienced before. And then the next morning, I was going to go into the consulate. They sent the vehicle, right? And some of the folks who live nearby, we all get in. We're going to work. And you stop at the corner, and there was a leper begging. And he put his arm through the open window of the car, the stump of his hand with the alms bucket on it. And you're trying to internalize all of this. And all you could think was, I'm not in Kansas anymore. And that was true throughout our careers. We're constantly having these experiences that are beyond the scope of the things that we are most accustomed to. But by putting ourselves out there, by virtue of having to do this, it transforms us as well. And it causes us to look at the world differently and to engage it differently. And for me, it was all about, I grew a lot. I learned a lot. I hope I grew, but I learned a lot.
I think you do. I mean, we've been fortunate and blessed to do some traveling around the world. And you realize once you travel that you live in a very, very, very small part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And going to see and getting involved in, different cultures and different countries, I've always found that amazing. It's something that we really enjoy. And I can imagine I guess when you moved to that region, I'm assuming you were married at the time. Like, did you just say to your wife, "Hey, honey, listen, I know you're from Minnesota, but we're moving to Nepal"?
Yeah, that's basically it.
Well, she should get credit.
I was very fortunate that my wife was a tremendous partner in all of this. And you really, if you're going to do this, it's got to be a shared endeavor, right? If it doesn't work for the family, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And for us, it did. And it worked for our children as well. And my wife was always so open to these experiences and to engaging. And she had this great gift, though, of being who she was. And, people, no matter where you go, people we're all the same. We want a good life for our kids. We want them to be healthy. We want them to be happy. We want them to grow up and live lives that are fulfilling. And we like to talk about our village, our hometowns, our families. And whether you're sitting at a dinner, and I've watched my wife sitting at a dinner with some minister in the government or a vice president or a Supreme Court justice, but you know what? We're all just people. And we all just want to talk. And you just talk and you engage and you are who you are.
Yes.
And it works, and it works, and it worked for us. That's what worked. It worked for us, and it worked for our kids, and it worked. It was a great life.
It is. And I've always felt, we try to teach the kids, and my dad taught us this, if you just treat everybody with respect, you'd be amazed on things you can get accomplished. And people are just people, and they just want to feel. I just had this conversation yesterday at my own house about somebody that came over to do some stuff, and I talked to him, and we had a good time, and we joked around, and he did a little extra stuff because I was just talked to him, and I was just respectful of his work and his job, and it just seems to me that that's few and far in between these days, in my opinion.
Somebody asked me, I get to ask sometimes, so how did you get to be an ambassador 3 times? What's the secret in diplomacy? And to me, an awful lot of it was just picturing my mom sitting on my shoulder and saying, Scott, I taught you better than that. You know, treating people the way you were taught to treat people, with respect and common dignity. And we all, whether we live in Uganda, Nepal, the United States, wherever it may be, we're all entitled to basic respect for human dignity. And if we remember that as a starting point, I think it helps. So,
well, and I think when you do that, you'll be amazed what respect you get back, and what people are willing to do. Or my wife and I always joke around, because we'll go check into a hotel and I'll talk to the person behind the desk and, hey, how's your day going? And blah, blah. And I swear to you, 9 out of 10 times they'll say, hey, Mr. Carrier, I give you an upgrade. Just because people want to help you. I feel like people want to help other people, but you've got to treat them with respect, and you've got to treat them nice. And it's amazing what the world would be like, I think, if more people took that attitude.
People want to be seen as well. They want to be seen and they want to be heard. And so often a clerk behind the counter or somebody that's helping, sometimes people treat them as if they're invisible.
Yes.
And again, in diplomacy, people can't be invisible to you. You have to engage. And in today's world more than ever, because today's world, we're dealing in countries where the demographics have changed so much. In Uganda, 70% of the country was under the age of 30. Half the nation was under the age of 18. If we aren't reaching out, if we aren't seeing these young people, if all we're doing is talking to the big man, to the president, to the prime minister, to the politician, but we forget these young folks who are the bulk of the nation, we do so at our peril. But so we have to find ways to open up and to engage, to reach out and to see the people who we are talking to and hear their voice. And that makes a big difference too. It's part of what I'll talk. Yeah, in one of the talks I'm giving down in Highlands, that's part of. We talk about the changing nature of diplomacy,
right.
And the world has changed so dramatically since the days when I joined the State Department. It has transformed the way we do business. It has transformed the issues that we have to confront, and it's a whole different picture now. And I think this is something that. Yeah, I talked about not knowing much about the Foreign Service in Minnesota in 1970s. I think most people still, and understandably perhaps, but they don't really know what the men and women who serve our nation as part of our diplomatic corps, as part of the Foreign Service, the sacrifices they make, the risks that they take, the dangers that they face. And I think that this is part of, again, just expanding our awareness a little bit and talking about what it means to serve on so many levels. So that's part of what I'm talking about.
Sure. Well, and I think that that's something that needs to be heard. By the way, if you're just tuning in or you're watching us on the Highlands Cable Group, I'm Mike from MikeandDooley.com. This is former U.S. Ambassador Scott DeLisi, who will be in Highlands. Have you been to Highlands before?
Never. My wife and I are so excited.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. But he will be here next week at the Center for Life Enrichment on Wednesday the 26th from 2 to 4. I guess the title of the speech is 35 years as part of America's other army, the U.S. Foreign Service. One of them is, do you wear a uniform? That's the first one. And the second one is what is it? It's the 4 horsemen of the robot apocalypse. Horsemen of the robot apocalypse. I mean, that's we talked about this before we went out on air. That seems like 2 diverse subjects that I'm sure somehow you're going to tie together. But before we get into the talks, I wanted to go back in time a little bit. You are a U.S. ambassador, or you weren't a U.S. ambassador. You went down that road. You retire, and it's from what I've read. Before you retired, you started. Well, I don't know if it was before you retired or not. It was before they had some. What did they have? An earthquake over in Nepal.
Yeah.
You started the Sorwe Foundation. So I wanted you to talk a little bit to our viewers about that.
Well, the Sorwe Foundation was started while I was still ambassador in Nepal. Okay. But upon retiring, I agreed to lead the Sorwe Foundation. In large part, the foundation was created to continue work that I did when I was ambassador. One of the lessons that we learned I went out to Nepal, which is one of the most seismically vulnerable countries on the planet. I went to Nepal in 2010, right after the earthquake in Haiti. In Haiti, 234,000 people died.
Oh,
We spent $1 billion just trying to help and respond in the first 6 months alone.
did you say 234,000?
234,000 people died in or after the quake. It wasn't everyone died during the quake. Many people died in the aftermath. Now, after the quake, you may recall, people were wondering, people would text 1-800-Haiti, and we gave our $10, and that's good. We're good people. We're compassionate people. But truly, if we really care, we always say, oh my God, what a disaster, what a tragedy, how can we help? But if we really care, Mike, the time to act isn't after everyone's dead. The time to act is before the disaster strikes, when we have an opportunity to save some of those lives. Maybe we could have changed it, Mike. Maybe only 130,000 would have died. Only. Still devastating. But we could have saved 10,000, 50,000, 70,000 lives. And if we save one life,
it's worth it.
It's a good day's work, man.
So
this is what I brought to Nepal. And President Obama at the time had said, no more Haitis. So I had to figure out what that meant and how we could do that in one country. And we did. We began to redefine how we engage of preparedness and also planning for the response. And so there were some folks that saw this and who cared about the work we were doing, and that led to the creation of the foundation. But then, shortly after the foundation was created, two earthquakes struck. Nepal in 2015.
Golly.
And the devastation was great, but we saw the work that we had done as a government, as a team, as an embassy. We saved lives. It made a difference. But just because one earthquake hits in 2015 or two doesn't mean that the work's done. It remains extremely vulnerable. There's more to do. So when I retired, as I told you, you get hooked on this idea of engaging the world, of service.
Right.
And I had a chance to do something in a country that I care about, because the people of Nepal truly they're very special, but it's also one of the poorest countries on the planet. And the challenges they face are so great, but we could make a difference. Even on a small scale, we could have an impact. So the foundation began its work, and we still focus very much on risk reduction and preparedness to save lives in advance. But we recognize as well that saving lives and making a difference isn't just about building a strong house or a strong school. It's about empowering people to begin to be able to make choices for themselves for their future, not waiting for government, not waiting for donors, but that means turning to some of the most vulnerable and most neglected within a society, oftentimes women, oftentimes the children, people with disabilities. And we've done all of that. We've got programs, one of our flagship programs, we work with the Nepal Ambulance Service, which is a nonprofit there that has just grown tremendously. And suddenly we're training. Used to be an ambulance was a taxi with a siren, and you probably would die in the back, right? Because there was no one there to help you. Now we are training skilled paramedics and fully equipped ambulances, and we are saving lives every day, but we're also creating a cadre of skilled paramedics. We've trained well over 100 now, and there are many more to come, who will be there in the next disaster. So it kind of covers both our bases.
Sure.
We're planning a program with the University of Colorado to do the risk reduction training that will save lives. We've helped, though. We've got a team that's leading a medical mission to a remote part of Nepal in the Gorkha region up in the mountains to, again, change the lives of that community, but build an ongoing relationship in women's health care, to educate, to train, and to build something that's sustainable. We support kids. There's a children's home that we support. You put a picture up on your page the other day,
right,
that shows my wife and I. Some of those kids, those are our kids at the Sacramento Children. These are the kids that we are helping every day, and these are kids who have been abandoned, who were abandoned, found at bus stations, found on the edge of the river as babies. Some have developmental challenges, but they now have a family. They have a home. And, you know, we were struck. These kids were so tremendously loving, but not because they were needy, but because they've received love and they know how to give it. And when we see that impact, when we support women's entrepreneurs groups, so these women suddenly take charge of their own lives. One woman looked at me and said, Ambassador, I no longer have to wait for my husband to go to India and maybe send back money for the children's school fees. I now am earning and I pay the school fees.
No.
We see the transformation, and these same women then are able to say, if I can make choices about this, I can make choices about making my home safer, about building a different future. And this is all part and parcel of what we do at Sorwe. You know, I got a long list of stuff, but it's a challenge. When I was ambassador, we had programs with tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Great. Now we measure our programs in thousands of dollars, but I also can see the impact in a much more personal and direct way. And the smile of those kids that were in that picture on your page, and the pride that woman showed when she told me that she was paying the school fees. And it's good. So we make a difference on whatever level we can. And right now, this is the level I can make a difference. I'll do it. Mike, I've lost the sound. I know you're there. We had talked about tech challenges earlier. Mike, I can't hear anything, should it? Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
And we're back.
Technical difficulties. Nothing is you can hear me fine now?
I hear you fine now.
What I was going to say was, when you were talking about those issues and the things that you're doing over there, and even the smallest things that make those people happy, it's interesting to me. You know, we live in a society where, you know, if our kid's iPhone doesn't work, or their Xbox doesn't work, or the internet is out, that they, you know, woe is me type of thing. And then I can imagine going to a country like that where these people are they just want clean water and food and an opportunity. And
I mean, it's amazing. And, you know, we talk about seeing people, right?
Right.
One of the things that we do, we've been working with people with disabilities in two ways. One was to build a program of inclusive tourism, so that to show people with disabilities, you can go to Nepal, you can trek, you can have this experience. And that's a great thing, right? And it kickstarts the economy. It helps to regrow the tourist industry after the earthquake, all good.
Yeah.
But it also sends a message to the people of Nepal. There's 500,000 Nepalis with physical disabilities who have been forgotten, who are pushed aside because it's a society. How do we deal with this? They don't have accessible buildings, streets, etc. I met a young woman confined to a wheelchair, so bright, so capable, so energetic, and wanting to contribute.
I'm here. Can you see me?
So this young woman,
right,
so wanted to contribute, but she said to me, Ambassador, you know, when I leave the house in the morning, I can't go to the bathroom anywhere because there's no access. So if I'm out for 10, 12 hours, said, you know how humiliating it is if you have to soil yourself in public. And these people have been forgotten. But so we are changing that picture. We had a conference on my last trip to Nepal. and the government officials came. We now have accessible tourism as an agenda item for the government. Our partners are engaged. We've designed a trekking trail for people with physical disabilities. We're doing more and more. And I looked at our partners sitting there in their wheelchairs or with their crutches or whatever else it was. And they looked, and you knew they were no longer invisible. This is the stuff, we take it for granted.
Yes.
And I mean, it's hard. Listen, it's hard to be in a wheelchair in America. Absolutely. But imagine trying to make your way. And we remind them that we do not define them by what they're missing. They're missing a leg. You're missing this. That doesn't define you. What defines you is what's here. It's your heart. It's your spirit. It's the courage, the resilience, the determination that you bring. And these were the people that I'm so proud to partner with. And this is why, there's nothing more challenging than trying to raise money. I never had to raise funds as an ambassador, right? We had a fundraiser. It was called the Internal Revenue Service.
Yeah.
Man, they were really good at what they did. They came through. So if you can raise $1,000, $2,000, you put it out into the field, but you see the impact. It may not be a lot, but it touches a life. It changes a life, and sometimes it saves a life.
Well, it doesn't take a lot either. I mean, like you said, probably $1,000 goes a long way.
Mike, I'll tell you, there's a program. One of our partners has this tremendous nutritional care program for malnourished babies. And these kids would very possibly die, but certainly suffer from stunting and all sorts of problems otherwise, if there wasn't an intervention. For $500, we can take that child and we can transform their future. We can save their life. But you say to people, what's a child's life worth? And trying to get folks to say, I can do that. We're trying to get people. So many of our partners are in the Nepali community. They're immigrants. They don't always have a lot. But we're trying to just get 1,000 people across the country to say, we'll donate $10 a month. That's $2.30 a week, which is nothing for us. But man, if we had that, then suddenly we begin. Not only does it cover all the expenses of the foundation, but it allows us to start the year with $50,000, $60,000 or more to put right out into the field and begin to make a difference. And this stuff. So anyway, this is the stuff we do. This is what an ambassador does in retirement, along with talking and running around. And I still do some work for the State Department and a variety of other things. But
I'm sure this is not what all ambassadors do. It's something that obviously you're passionate about, has touched your heart. You see it firsthand. I mean, I think it's easy for people to hear stories about people that are struggling somewhere else and go, I'll send them $10 or I'll send them $5 or not sending anything. But when you go there and you see it, that's when you're like, man, for $10 a week or $10 a month or $100 a month or $100.
It's not that we don't have problems at home. We do. Look at the challenges that North Carolina is going to face now. We are following Florence, and we know that.
Right.
But for me, I know that I may be particularly well placed to be able to make a difference in Nepal. And I know that we don't have the same sort of resources that are dedicated to having that impact in Nepal that we will have as people step up to work with our fellow citizens in North Carolina or South Carolina or wherever the next storm hits.
Right.
So for us, for me, you say, where can I do some good? Where can I have the greatest impact? For me, that right now, that's in Nepal.
Well, and I think what happens, like you said earlier, you get an earthquake or you get some kind of event that happens here or really around the world, and people do step up and people do support and people do help. But in places like Nepal and other places that you've been to and many places around the world, it's not a specific event. I mean, there are specific events that happen that cause a lot of issues, but it's just the day-to-day life, living that not just there was an earthquake or when that happens, it makes it even worse.
And again, it's great to talk about preparedness, or about democracy or anything else. But if you're struggling to say, how am I going to feed my kid tonight? You aren't worrying about the big ideas. So again, it's empowering some of the most vulnerable in that society.
Right.
And again, I don't have millions of dollars, but if we can touch a few lives, and when we do this, a lot of the work we do, I think, is a catalyst. Folks in one village, and I've seen this play out, if we're working with one community, the folks in the nearby village, they look and say, oh, look at what they're doing there. You could do that too. It's not rocket science. It doesn't, we're finding those programs that don't require, huge amounts of money, but it requires a commitment and energy and a desire. And so this is, so it's been fascinating to take some of the lessons that I learned serving our nation.
Right.
And now saying, so how do I do this? How do I take these and apply it to what I'm trying to do today? And it all comes down to, again, to me, my latest newsletter, I posed the question to our reader. I said, how will you engage the world? And that's the choice that we all make. And we all, whether we make it consciously or not, we all have to think about how we are going to relate to the world around us. What is the impact that we seek to have or that we will have? And, not everybody, I'm retired. I've got some flexibility. My wife won't let me say I'm retired anymore. Actually, I do different things now. And so we can do this stuff. I can do some of this stuff, whereas somebody who's got a full-time job and they can't, but they can choose to engage the world in their own way. And that's always the question. Well, I get a few folks who will engage it at $2.30 a week. That's all I'm asking for.
$2.30, and maybe you're in this position for maybe you're in this position for a reason. I mean, like I said earlier, you definitely have the passion for it. You were definitely, you've been there, you've seen it. You're doing a lot of good. If people want to find out more about the Sorwe Foundation, they go to sorwefoundation.com, I'm assuming.
They do www.sorwe.org. O-R-G. We're a 501c3 charity. We've got a Facebook page. I've got a web page that I struggle to keep up with, but I manage a little bit. But the Facebook page also tells a lot about what we're doing. Our newsletters are there. So it's all good. And as you say, Mike, a lot of it, you talk about passion. And I think that's, if there was one thing that I sought to do as an ambassador, is you've got to believe in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you believe in what you're doing. If I believe in America, if I believe in the product that I've got, and my product is the United States. Ambassadors, we're storytellers and we're salesmen. And I'm telling a story about America, about our values and our product. And if I believe in it, if I'm passionate and I express it, people know when you speak from the heart, and they know when you don't.
Well, they can tell. They can see it on your face. They can see it on the way you talk about it. I mean, they can tell.
We bring energy and commitment and determination. It's amazing what we can do. It surprises me all the time. You start with the little goal, but you can always do more. You'd be shocked. You can.
Now, when I wrote this down to ask you because I thought it was kind of unique. I don't know how unique it is amongst ambassadors in general, but you served for President Bush, George W., and then President Obama. Is that unique to have served as an ambassador under two different presidents from two different parties? Not for a career officer. For someone like, again, they're the non-career ambassadors who generally are the supporters of one party or the other, and that's fine. This is the way the process works, and we've got some exceptionally good non-career ambassadors, some folks who do a wonderful job. But for a career officer, we serve our nation. Gotcha.
We take the same oath that everybody else does, that our brothers and sisters in uniform do, to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And we work for the President of the United States. And our job is to offer the administration, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. We offer them our wisdom, such as it is, our best understanding, our experience, and it's up to them. They make the choices, and then we implement. And we do it as best we can, and we support whoever the president is, because that's the choice the people of America made.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't elect us. They elected the president. We support the president. We do our best to ensure that the policies are enacted. But again, because we've had a broader exposure across administration, sometimes we can say it's not always to the president, obviously, but to his appointees, to the Secretary of State, to an assistant secretary, I know that looks like a good idea, but
Right.
have you thought about this? And
Right.
so that's what we offer. And so, yes, so for many of us, if we're lucky enough to have a chance to serve more than once as an ambassador, I was very fortunate to serve 3 times. But if that happens, we very well may serve across different administrations. But hopefully it's because we bring something of value, and for us, it's not about the politics.
Right.
It's about our nation, just as it is for the men and women in uniform. We serve, whoever is the president, we serve.
Now, do you are the ambassadorships 4-year appointments?
Ambassadorships are at the pleasure of the president. So generally, though, with a career officer in general, most of the time we do a 3-year tour as ambassador, and then we rotate. And that is often true. The non-careers will serve through the administration. And if the administration, say, runs into a second term, there may be changes, and some of them may choose to leave. They want to go back to their private lives. The president always has whenever there's an election, even if the president is real, career, non-career, everybody submits their resignation to give the president the opportunity to choose a new team, should he or she someday wish to do so. So so 3 years is probably the norm for a career guy. For me, I was Nepal, I was cut short, sadly, in a way, because we love Nepal. But you get a phone call one day and they say, Scott, what would you say if we asked you to leave Nepal early to go to Uganda?
Yeah.
That's not really a question, is it?
No.
And if it is a question, there's only one answer that I think is acceptable. And they said, yeah, that's right.
There's not a question mark on the end of that sentence. There was a period.
That's exactly right, Mike. But so we were a little shorter in Nepal, for example. We were 800 days. But who was counting? Yeah, we were. Yeah, my wife knew.
Now, so when you're in Nepal, let me ask you this. Very important question. What is the strangest thing you've ever eaten in Nepal?
What is the? You were breaking up for a second.
The oddest thing you've ever eaten in Nepal? Because you're not running out to the McDonald's there.
Oh no, you're not running out to McDonald's. Nepal. Nepal wasn't too weird. I mean, Nepal, we ate very well. I mean, you get up into the high mountains. We were trekking up in the Everest region, and you start getting into some of the local plants and the bamboo shoots and things that get worked into the food. It was, a little different, but not weird. Not as weird as eating goat hooves, which was always interesting. And of course, there was the time, I still remember one time, I'll digress from it. We were in Pakistan. I was out in the Rajasthan desert visiting the ancestral village of one of the politicians. Mm-hmm. They offered us a great lunch, and one of the items served were testicles.
Oh,
now, and I know some people may consider this a delicacy. For me, this was a bit of a challenge, but you learn skills as a diplomat. So you make sure. I'm going to give your listeners a tip here. On the one hand, you've got a chicken breast, fortunately, on the bone, and you flip it so it is convex, concave, whatever. It makes a little cave, right? You also keep over here, you keep a little bit of rice. And then you take the offending articles on your plate and you engage your partner at lunch in intense eye contact as you cut these up into smaller pieces, and you flip them under the chicken breast and flip them into the rice. And then you say, oh, Janab, I have eaten so well. And they say, would you like more? I say, oh, I could not have another bite.
That's pretty good. I hope everybody, if you're ever faced with the option of eating testicles, that you've now learned how to diplomatically move them around the plate in such a way that they are not discovered.
That's one option. The other option is to have somebody lower than you in ranks. I've heard the story of the military officers who went to Mongolia, and as winter comes, you have to eat fat, to put on fat to protect yourself, insulate yourself. And I remember the story of the villagers giving the general or the ring of fat, and he handed it to the colonel, who handed it to the major, who handed it to the lieutenant, and said, "Son, eat for your country." This is what we do, right? You can encounter some weird things, and the worst were I say with great affection, but our Chinese colleagues. I think the Chinese ambassadors would often invite you, and they often had their own chefs that had come from China with them. And I think that they really had a desire to see how much they could mess with the Westerners. And they would feed you some pretty unusual things, to say the least, including sea slugs and the 1,000-year eggs and the this and that. And you would wash it down with the Mai Tai, I would just.
And you got it.
These were always interesting experiences, Mike, but these are the sacrifices we made in service to our nation.
Yes, thank you to all the ambassadors around the world that are having to sacrifice. Because I would have to say that if they offer that to you and you don't accept it or you don't eat it, that's probably could be somewhat insulting. So you've got to do it.
There are challenges. That's exactly right. You have to find ways to manage all of this.
So what do we do when diplomats from other countries come here? Do we take them to, Olive Garden and Outback and
they get the full American experience, and sometimes they're totally bemused by the size of our servings, and everything seems gargantuan. We recently had some Nepali kids here. We are doing a program as well supporting kids in the STEMS education. And we're working with George Mason University here. And we had the kids here, but I got to admit, after a couple of days of American food, they were begging for dal bhat, which is their basic lentils and the rice and a little green vegetable, and that would have been fine for them. Your
stomachs probably can't handle all this processed food and like you said, big servings. But I got to imagine for them coming here, I mean, it must just be an eye-opening, amazing experience.
It is an experience for people to come to America. And I talked earlier about selling the product. Now, people want to come to America not just to see the roads and because they've seen pictures from Hollywood. When we see these folks lined up outside of our embassies waiting for visas, they're coming because of what we stand for, because of who we are in the world and how they perceive this nation and the values that we talk about. And this land, we talk about a land of opportunity, but we are. I mean, and I know, people can debate this and say, we got all sorts of political debates these days, but our society still is an incredible place. My father was barely born in America. My grandparents came from Sicily. One day at lunch, I found myself in Botswana, where I was the deputy ambassador. I'm sitting at lunch with a woman named Kam Ting Wong. She was the ambassador's secretary. She had been smuggled into the U.S. as an illegal immigrant as a baby. Had another guy, Tedla Yitna, an Ethiopian who had fled across the Ogaden Desert under Mengistu, almost died, made his way eventually to the U.S., joined the Peace Corps, worked for them for a while, then ended up working for state. We had Jules and Alice Benyak, who were refugees who had fled across the Iron Curtain, almost been killed in the process, came to our shores again as refugees. And here they were in Botswana, all part of the American embassy. The Chinese immigrant, the Ethiopian, the Eastern Europeans, and here was me. I was the establishment, the white guy from, who was a whole generation into the United States.
Right.
And you looked and you said, only in America would this happen.
Oh, sure.
In almost any other country, none of these immigrants would ever have been in that position. My grandfather would look and say, if he had lived, he would have said, Dio mio, my grandson, he's an American ambassador. What a story this was for him and his family. And this is when these people come to America and they see. And this is really different, man, for them. A friend from Uganda came, a woman, we were walking the dogs. she saw a bus go by being driven by a woman. And it was like, oh, women can drive buses in America? Yeah. I mean, the role of women in society. And we're sure, do we still debate, have we reached where we want to be on equal pay and all the rest? Maybe not, but we can debate all that stuff too. But still, compared to so many places in the world, we as a nation are worth emulating. And I know that seems, some people would say again, because we don't listen to each other anymore, because we've become so tribal at times, they wonder, are we still that model? But in many ways, I believe we are, and I believe that our fundamentals are still the fundamentals that they have always been. And if only we could see ourselves sometimes through other people's eyes, maybe I would hope that it would reaffirm our appreciation.
I think that's what happens. I think, and what we said earlier, when you go to other countries and you see how other countries live, how other people in those countries live, especially the areas that you've been to, you come back and you say, thank goodness, you have a new appreciation for it. But if you don't leave your area, or you don't, obviously you can get on the internet and you can see what's happening in different countries. And if you don't do those kind of things, you don't really, I think a lot of people appreciate what you have. More so you complain about what you don't have. And those people in those countries, they really have a lot of things to complain about, or could complain. And I would imagine that when you meet people in those countries that have wonderful attitudes, it's an amazing thing to see people in those situations with thankful and appreciative attitudes. I mean,
absolutely, Mike.
For the basic things in life.
Yep.
That I'm pretty sure when you go to I'm pretty sure when you go to Nepal, nobody's complaining about not having the newest iPhone.
No, they aren't. Though it is amazing to see the inroads that technology has made,
right,
and how it in turn is transforming these societies as well.
Yeah.
And I spoke earlier about our engagement with young people, and it's something I talk about in part during in one of my presentations about the changing face of diplomacy. But young people are seeing the world differently. Their expectations are different. It's not so much the latest iPhone, but it is the smartphone technology, the ability to suddenly be connected with the broader world as well, and it's sparking all sorts of things. Yeah, and this is again something else that's worth our thinking about and understanding. I was one of the first. It was kind of cool. I was one of the first ambassadors to use Facebook as a diplomatic tool. And this was, nobody knew quite how to do this stuff yet. So it was really nice. So no one in Washington was telling me what to do because they didn't know either. So I got to kind of, they barely knew I was doing it. But it was fascinating to see how we can use these tools like this.
Yeah.
Engaging an audience that we otherwise would not have been able to reach 20 years ago, but today we can.
Right.
So, but these are just tools. We have to be very intentional in their use and think about how we want to use these to what end.
Right. Exactly. We talked about this earlier. I mean, technology is a wonderful thing. It opens up doors. It opens up opportunities. You can see things. You can learn about things, but you've got to use it for the right reasons. And in my opinion, you can't get hooked on it. You have to also learn communication skills, right? I mean, look how many kids these days, I think, really struggle with writing. When was the last time a kid actually wrote a letter? Or it's all texting.
I mean, and it's the ability to use language effectively,
yes,
to communicate effectively. This is tremendously important. It's why. So I'm always bemused at the idea that I'm coming down to Highlands to speak. When I joined the Foreign Service, the idea of public speaking, yes, I was, oh my God, don't make me do it. Just shoot me now. I did not want to speak publicly. I was not comfortable at all. But over time, I learned, I got better at it. And you learn that the goal is communication. It's to engage people. It's to spark that conversation. It's to share an understanding. When I'm speaking about the United States, it's all of these things. And you realize that there's great value if we can speak to each other, if we listen to each other, if we engage in those conversations. So yeah, it's kids don't learn those skills. I worry a bit.
Well, I think so, and you have a very unique perspective. Now, people, you'll have to come out next Wednesday on the 26th from 2 to 4, and Thursday the 27th from 10 to 12, and you'll have to be the judge if Mr. DeLisi has come a long way in his public speaking skills, because he just downplayed. Or he didn't downplay, but he talked about how much he didn't like it. So you'll have to come to the Center for Life Enrichment next Wednesday and Thursday in beautiful Highlands, North Carolina. I don't know. Where are you? Are you in Minnesota right now?
No, I live outside of Washington, D.C., because I still do some work for State Department. So I'm out in Haymarket, Virginia, small town right at the start of the Shenandoah Valley. So
beautiful. And so that sounds like a beautiful area. And Highlands right now, it's probably about 70 degrees. Next week, I saw the high is going to be 70, low is going to be 50. It's a beautiful town. Where do you stay when you come to Highlands?
We are staying. Our colleagues at CLE have arranged for us to stay with a lovely couple there who have a guest house, I think, that they're going to put us up in. So we're looking forward to that, and we're looking forward to visiting some of the restaurants and walking around town and just enjoying it. Everyone has told me how beautiful it is and what a great experience. Leah and I are just tremendously excited about coming on down.
Well, I know the Center for Life Enrichment is excited about having you come there next Wednesday and Thursday and do these presentations. Before we wrap up, just for anybody that's watching on Highlands Cable Group, Channel 14, or if you're watching this on our social media, obviously, I'm Mike from Mike and Dooley. This is former Ambassador Scott DeLisi, who is coming to Highlands next week. And I just wanted you to give kind of a brief little overview. I don't want you to give away any of the meaty stuff, but a brief little overview of your two presentations next week. Get a little teaser.
A little teaser.
Yes, sir.
They're both. There's a theme that connects both of them, I guess, and that is that we live in a world of change. Of tremendously rapid change. And it's changing the way we engage the world, the way we engage each other, and it's posing tremendous challenges and questions for our future. So one of the first talk about do you wear a uniform really looks at it's not so much about my journey of 35 years as a career diplomat, but that journey provides a context to discuss how dramatically the world has changed and some of the truly compelling issues that lie ahead of us, and why we need our citizens to be thinking about these things and to be engaged in the world and to help us as a nation as we ask ourselves this question about how will we engage the world in the years ahead. Mm-hmm. I try to do, that's what we'll talk about in the first presentation. And the second one about the four horsemen of the robot apocalypse.
Yes, that sounds very intense.
We know that part of the things that are driving this tremendous process of change that we're seeing is this nexus between big data, information technology, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology. And we're seeing revolutions in all of these areas. And some would argue that we are moving beyond. We're now in the post-industrial revolution era, and we are facing a new revolution. And that these technologies are going to define our future and challenge us in the future. The world has changed tremendously. Sure. And it's going to keep on changing in ways that we can't begin to anticipate. So I look a bit at what some of these changes may be, what some of the futurists and others are talking about. And it really, a lot of food for thought. But once again, it comes down to the basic question as we look at all of these things. What does it mean for us as a society? How we engage each other, our economy, jobs, the future for our children and our grandchildren. And more than ever, these are issues that we, as the people who will be affected by it and whose children will be affected by it, I don't know the answers to all these questions, but I do know that we need to be thinking about it.
Well, you can, like you said earlier, you can bring up, it creates conversation. It sparks conversation. It hopefully sparks discussions, debates.
That's that's cool. Yeah, as you had said earlier, I'm not come down. I'm not one of the talking heads from CNN or Fox. Yeah, I don't have revealed truth, divine wisdom, none of that. But I do have a perspective that has been shaped by those 35 years of service, by engaging the world, by doing a lot of different stuff as time has gone by.
Right.
And I hope that we will have a discussion about these things, because it really does go to who we are, to our moral and ethical judgments and values. And these are things that we're going to have to think about, because it's all going to be different as we go forward. But it's a fascinating time to be alive. And it's fun to talk about all of these things.
And one thing you know for certain is things are going to change. Things are changing, and they're changing rapidly.
And we aren't going to put that genie back in the bottle, I'm afraid. So we better figure out how to manage it.
Right. Well, this has been Mike from MikeandDooley.com. This is former Ambassador Scott DeLisi, who will be in Highlands next Wednesday and Thursday at the Center for Life Enrichment. So you could go to their website. You could check that out. You could buy tickets Wednesdays from 2 to 4, Thursdays from 10 to 12. You can also go to sorwe.org to find out more about what Mr. DeLisi is doing in the Nepal, and as part of a group in the Nepal area, and hopefully read some information and help out. Like you said earlier, you don't need to donate $1 million to help people.
No, you don't. You really don't. And listen, I hate to. I don't like to even raising money's hard.
Right.
But I was told early on that you can't be embarrassed to ask for help for something you believe in.
Right.
I believe in engaging the world like this. I think that it matters, and I think that we all can help to make that difference. So I ask folks all the time, but we just value having the opportunity to get people to look at what we're doing and think a little bit of help. We are more than grateful. So,
like I say, every little dollar helps. Small change can have a big impact. So, thank you for joining me on the show. I look forward to. It's a very small town. Actually, I'm going to come to one or both of your talks, so I'll meet you there. But it's a very small town.
To see you there, Mike. If you aren't there, I'm going to be very upset.
Well, I will be there, and not only that, but one thing you learn about living in Highlands or a small town in general is I'll probably see you there. I'll probably see you at the grocery store. I'll see you at the restaurant. I'll also see you on Main Street. Well, you run into people quite often. So I know everybody in town. I've talked to several people. People are looking forward to having you here, having you give those presentations. And I think you're going to enjoy Highlands.
I know we are. We're really looking forward to it. So we'll see you next week.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye-bye.